Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to another episode of the Think Clinical Podcast. My name is Hamza. Thank you so much once again for joining us. We really do appreciate your time. We appreciate your everything you do for us. Today we are going to be looking at something that I can relate personally to. And it's the fact that doctors really do fail at business a lot, and it's very much so in recent times. And this has been a breeding ground for a lot of business-related entities to start creeping into the healthcare space, because when doctors go or invest into healthcare by themselves, they don't do too well. And doctors don't fail in business because they are bad or because we are bad. We fail because we are never taught the rules of business, and that's the most important thing that you would realize when you start running a business or you've tried to play around the business landscape for a while. So it's very personal for me, because we are talking about why some of the smartest people in healthcare are consistently struggling with business, and I have been through the grind of it, and I've exposed myself to more tools and more resources to be able to understand how business really works. But to start off this episode, I would like to start with a question. And the question is how many hours of business training does an average physician receive during medical school or residency? And if you take a guess, according to a survey in Academy of Medicine, in all of your medical school education, the most training you will get remotely related to business is 8 hours. 8 hours. 8 hours across 4 years of medical school, and then 3 to sometimes 6 years in medical school to about 3 to 7 years in residency. And for context, physicians receive approximately 10,000 to 15,000 hours of clinical training during this time period. And guess what? Only 8 hours of those are remotely related to business. So here is what it looks like, and that is what was the basis for the conversations when I was part of the co-creators of the Business of Medicine program at the University of Nevada in Reno, which has been running for 2 years now. And the idea was to expose residents as an elective program, expose residents who were interested in understanding or getting some more understanding of the business of medicine before they go or as they prepare to go into residency. And so when you look at this in practice, the American Medical Association found that 63% of practicing physicians report feeling unprepared to manage their business aspects of their practices. There are 49% who say they receive zero training in basic financial management, and they have 71% who say they don't understand their practice profit and loss statement. And the moment you lose sight and you lose knowledge of some of these conversations, then you don't have a business. And they can interpret, so give doctors the most complicated diagnostic tests, the most complicated surgeries. They will run them and they will perform magically, but they can't read their own P&Ls, which is a basic thing every business person should be able to look at and make sense of. So that's not a failure of intelligence, a failure of training, and everybody needs training in this field. So let me give you the data on what this will cost. Research from Merritt Hawkins shows that physicians who lack business training make systematic errors that cost their practice an average of $100,000 to $250,000 annually. One, because they have poor payer contract negotiations. They didn't even know they were poor. They have inefficient scheduling and operations. They missed revenue opportunities when they could have taken them, and they had excessive overload. And here's the tragedy. Most physicians don't even realize these lists exist until they are facing financial crisis, and they bring in a consultant or someone to look at them like, what are you doing with all these things and all these people? So the one thing that we need to be talking about is the identity crisis that nobody really talks about. But inadequate training is only half of the story. When we start talking about identity crisis, the other half of it is about identity. What medical training actually teaches doctors is that business is beneath you, and the top of your priority should be clinical practice. Yes, to some extent, but business is not beneath you. Because if you are looking at running your own practice and you don't consider learning about the business of what you're doing, yes, your clinical skill will always come into play, but it will never save your business at the end of it. So medical professionalism is constructed in opposition to commercializing. Students are socialized to view business orientation as so basically doctors are made to look at patient care as a priority and to move away from the business thinking. Patients are made to actually look at, or doctors are made to actually look at their business and the patient as the core of it, which is what should happen, and actively avoid everything else that is on the other side. So medical education continuously discouraging business thinking. So it's as if caring about profit means that you care less about patients, and this is completely inaccurate. So here's the research of how deep this could go. When a survey was done on medical students from New England Journal of Medicine, they found that 78% agreed with statement focusing on the business side of medicine compromises patient care. 78% of them. 84% said they chose medicine specifically to avoid business careers. Again, 92% said they received implicit and explicit messages during their training that business concerns were secondary to clinical concerns. Now imagine those same students graduating, opening practices, and suddenly discovering that business concerns aren't secondary, but they're essential. The cognitive dissonance is brutal, and you have spent a decade training your brain to prioritize clinical outcomes above everything else. And you've actually internalized the message that good medicine and profitable medicine are in tension. Then you open your practice and discover that you can't help patients if you can't afford to keep your doors open. Insurance companies don't reimburse based on quality, they reimburse based on coding accuracy. The best clinical care in the world doesn't matter if patients can't find you. And we have episodes around all these things and how you can get this done. You can check our YouTube channel. And again, the one thing I hear most doctors saying is, I'm a really good doctor. Why is my practice struggling? The answer is never and isn't about the fact that you're a bad doctor. The answer is that you're operating in a system that requires skills that were never taught to you and actively discourage you from learning those. So, what is actually the financial literacy gap we're talking about here? The gap number one is understanding cash flow and profitability. A study from the Medical Group Management Association found that 58% of physician practice owners couldn't distinguish between cash flow and profitability. And I'm guessing that you listening to me right now would also be thinking, what's the difference between cash flow and profitability? They are not the same thing. You can be profitable on paper while running out of cash. That is the reality of it. And closing your practice as a result is easy, and it's one of the things that we see. A real example, a dermatology practice showed a net profit of $120,000 in their annual P&L. The physician assumed the business was good. Meanwhile, $80,000 was in unpaid insurance claims, which is sitting in AR. $45,000 of it was in recent equipment purchases, and $35,000 is in upcoming payroll. So their bank account had $12,000, and they were profitable and broke at the same time. So they did not have the money to be able to keep going. So without understanding cash flow management, they nearly couldn't make payroll despite being profitable. The gap number two is that payer contract negotiations. And research from health leaders shows that physicians who negotiate their own payer contracts without expertise expect reimbursement rates that are on average 15 to 25% below what they could have achieved with proper negotiation. For a practice generating $1 million annually, that's $150,000 to $250,000 left on the table that they could have gotten every single year. So if you run for 10 years, you're talking about $1.5 to $2.5 million you're leaving on the table. Why? Because physicians were not taught that reimbursement rates are negotiable, what benchmarks to use, and how to leverage their patient volume. The gap number 3 is understanding practice valuation. According to American Board of Association, 67% of physicians approaching retirement don't understand how their practice is valued. The result? They sell for far less than the market value. They make operational decisions that destroy practice value, and they fail to structure the business in a way that's attractive to buyers. One physician told researchers, "I spent 30 years building my practice, and when I went to sell it, I discovered I had made a dozen decisions that made it nearly worthless to a buyer. No one ever told me to think about the exit strategy." Now, what's the path forward? What's the solution? We are talking about all these problems, but we have to talk about solutions. 1. Acknowledge that financial literacy is a clinical survival skill. We have to. You cannot sustainably deliver excellent patient care in a failing business. Full stop. So you need to understand your P&L statements. You need to understand cash flow management. You need to understand practice valuation isn't about nice to haves. They are essential, but it's not all about that. Second strategy is get the education you were never given. Practice management consultants who specialize in your specialty. Peer groups like Association of American Physicians and Surgeons. MBA level courses designed for healthcare professionals. Financial advisors who specialize in healthcare practices. The average investment for that is going to be between $5,000 to $15,000 annually. Average return is going to be $50,000 to $200,000 in improved practice performance. That's a 5 to 20x ROI on education you could have received on training. The third thing is hire for the gaps. Research from MGMA shows that practices that with professional administrators have 23% higher profit margins, 40% less physician burnout, and 31% higher staff retention. You don't need to become a business expert. You need to acknowledge that business expertise matters and bring it onto your team. And the fourth solution we'll look at is reframe business competence as patient care. Here's the mindset shift from the mindset. Here's the mindset shift we should be talking about. Financial sustainability isn't in tension with patient care. It's a prerequisite for it. Every dollar you leave on the table through poor contracting is a dollar you can't invest in better equipment, staff training, or patient services. And every inefficiency you tolerate drains resources that could improve outcomes. So, business competence isn't about greed, it's about stewardship, managing resources wisely so you can serve patients better. That's not a character flaw. It's a system failure that has gone a long way to affect how doctors are seeing their businesses. And there's always good news. Business skills can be learned. Financial literacy can be developed. And once you have them, you don't just save your practice, you unlock your potential to save more patients, deliver better care, and build something more sustainable. Please remember to subscribe, like, and share. This has been another exciting episode. Thank you so much and have a good day.